Hey there, everyone. Thank you for joining me today for the very first presentation of gCON for Google Apps admins. My name is Andrew McGonigal. I am formerly the guru at Google Guru. I'm in the process of passing that along, but this will be my kind of final gCON day. So I'm really excited to be here with all of you today. We have three fantastic presentations prepared for you that are directed specifically for Google Apps admins. So this should be a really targeted day compared to some of the other gCON events that we've had in the past. So if this is your first experience with gCON or Google Guru, Google Guru is a Google Apps tips, trips, and training website for Google Apps admins and end users. So if you're a Google Apps admin, it's a great place to learn more about managing Google Apps. And if you'd like to educate your users, it's a great place to turn around and send your users some really helpful information about Google Apps. For gCON specifically, we've held a few of these training events in the past. We had a Google Apps for Education specific day in November that was amazing. We had hundreds of you show up, so it was really great to have Google Apps for Education admins and educators share their best practices for managing Google Apps. And then before that, we had a week-long event with about 12 presentations. There was thousands of attendees. It was a huge event. So these past two are a little bit more scaled down, and hopefully it's a little bit more manageable for all of your schedules. There's a couple things that I want to just cover really quickly before we get started. And on the right-hand side of your screen, you should see some links that will take you outside of the Hangout. So we have a form available for you to fill out if you'd like to get a copy of this presentation after it's done. So you can just go there, fill out the quick form, and we'll send you the form later on today. Or excuse me, we'll send you the presentation later on today. We also have links to the other two presentations today. One is Mastering Messaging Administration in Google Apps. That's a really exciting presentation that I think will be great for Google Apps admins out there that want to learn more about handling messaging. And we also will wrap up the day with a Google Apps roundtable. So we have three Google Apps admins from different backgrounds and different areas that are going to discuss their experiences with Google Apps and offer some tips and maybe some chances to learn from mistakes that they've made and really just help share some knowledge with the Google Apps admin community. And then lastly, we have the gCON Google Plus community. So if you have any questions for our presenters today or just any other Google Apps admin, this is a really great place to submit a question, and it'll be answered by myself or one of our presenters or just a regular Google Apps admin there that wants to help out. So if you have any questions, that's definitely a great place to look. And we'll also be taking questions for this presentation using the Q&A app. So that will also be on the right-hand side of your screen. It's a little bit tricky to navigate to. If you click on the grid, the little square grid in the top right corner of your screen, you should be able to flip that over to see the questions. So then you can just submit your questions there for Erin, or you can +1 questions that you'd like to see answered. So those are two options for asking questions today on the Q&A app or in the gCON Google Plus community. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and start our very first presentation today. Erin Lynch is the Postini Transition Manager at Google, and she has a great presentation for you today about how to effectively manage that transition and the different stages of the transition, and hopefully answer some questions that you all may have. So Erin, if you want to go ahead and get started with your presentation, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thanks, Andrew. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I appreciate your time. As Andrew said, I am the Postini Transition Manager. I lead a group of folks helping some of our largest customers transition from Postini to Google Apps. I'm here today in hopes of demystifying the transition, letting you all know what it entails, what some of the work is that we need administrators to do, what you can do for your end users, and also to share all the assistance that Google tries to provide with automated tools to make the switch from Postini to Google Apps as seamless as possible. So let me pull up my slides. Okay. So let's get started. My agenda today is very basic. I want to just provide a brief background of why I'm even here, what is the transition, discuss some recent news about invitations, how you will find out when it's your turn to go. I want to also spend a lot of time talking through what a transition looks like, and finally share some useful resources for you and your end users and any e-discovery personnel that you have who might need to search and export from your archive. So first, in August of 2012, Google announced that we would transition all Postini customers to the apps platform. This is something that has taken us quite a while to build a tool that works for all 40,000 of our Postini customers, and I'm happy to report that we're more than halfway complete with moving customers over to Google Apps, and those folks have been really happy with the service and products and features that we have on the other side. So I'm thrilled for any of you who are still waiting for an invitation or about to begin your transition. I hope and promise that you will enjoy life after Postini, as many customers already are. In recent news, we have invited all GMS customers. By GMS, I mean Google Message Security, which was the product in Postini that provided anti-spam and antivirus filtering for mail flow, either in front of Google Apps, Gmail, or in front of an on-premise system like Exchange or Lotus Notes. The invitation that you receive, a screenshot of that, an example appears to the right, and in that invitation you will see a deadline as to when we ask that you begin your transition by, to make sure that we can move you off as quickly and safely as possible. The GMD customers, which stands for Google Message Discovery, those are folks who have purchased our archiving and e-discovery solution in Postini. Those folks' invitations will be coming very soon. We are doing a slow ramp up of select customers right now, and very soon we'll invite the remainder of all GMD customers to begin moving all of your GMS settings as well as all of your GMD archive data over to our Google Vault product. And the important thing to note is, due to the fact that we're getting close to Postini end of life, it's important to keep track of the invitation that you receive from Google and understand what your deadline is for transition. We have shortened our transition windows to get customers off Postini as quickly and safely as possible, so please be sure to check the date that appears in the invitation. The invitation is sent to the administrator listed in your Postini administrator console, and that's something that we detail in the Postini transition guide, which is linked within the invitation, as well as I provide links throughout this presentation. I also wanted to point out the bottom left corner. Often on the slides I'm trying to include a short link to helpful sites or information that is pertinent to what I'm speaking about. If you have any questions about your specific invitation, when it might arrive, questions about your deadline, etc., I've listed here the link to get targeted Postini transition support from Google, so please feel free to use that as needed. One thing I do want to stress, although customers often do get frustrated when we force change in systems especially, I want to make sure it's clear that Google and many customers that have moved already really see this as an upgrade. What I've laid out here are some actual examples of how Google Apps message security, which is GAMS there on the left, is superior to Google message security, and how Vault is superior to GMD. So for example, both products, GAMS and Vault, are built on the apps platform, which is extremely innovative, scalable, stable, and secure, so a much better place to be than Postini. On the GAMS side, we also have great features, including providing inheritance by organization. In Postini, administrators had to manage settings at multiple levels of organizations, and now in Google Apps, we provide inheritance from OU hierarchies, which is definitely a wanted feature that we've heard about. In addition, the spam filtering in GAMS is far superior. It's self-learning. It watches and understands on an end-user level what that person believes is or is not spam, and the filtering algorithm is far superior to that of Postini GMS. We also have a much higher sender list limit in GAMS. We hold spam for far longer, so if one of your end users is out of the office and not able to process spam, or if they need to go back and look at something, it's available for 30 days in Google instead of the 14 in Postini. And we have far more languages supported in the admin interface in Google Apps than in Postini. On the Vault side, in addition to what I mentioned being built on the apps platform, we offer archiving of Google Talk or Hangouts on the record chat, as well as Drive. And we have far more search options. Using the powerful Gmail search operators in Vault is something that we support. We offer unlimited retention rules, whereas GMD had a max of 10 years. Our search range limit is unlimited, whereas in Postini there was a 370-day limit. And an oft asked about feature was for GMD to show messages as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, there was usually a delay of up to 1 hour, and in Google Vault, those messages appear as soon as they are available in that end user's inbox as well. So lots of really great features available, and really excited for you all to take advantage of them. My next focus point for the next couple slides is to talk you through what it looks like to transition and the main actions that you as administrators need to perform to get completely moved off Postini. What you see here is sort of an image of the way our team talks to customers about the transition phases. Phase 0 is just doing preparations. There's a detailed checklist in the Postini Transition Guide, which I linked below, which recommend completing steps like configuring your firewall, verifying any domains that you have in Postini that you want transition to Google Apps, creating a test organization unit with pilot users so that when you get to the pass-through phase, which is that PT diamond I'll talk more about, that you can test out Google Apps anti-spam filtering on just a subset of your users. There are many other steps that we recommend for administrators to take even before actually beginning transition. So I highly recommend heading over to our Postini Transition Guide to review our step-by-step checklist there. The one overarching comment I want to make about the transition is the majority of the heavy lifting is done by an automated tool that I'm going to walk through in grave detail. So what's important is administrators have 4 key actions that they need to complete throughout the transition. The first, and those all appear in these blue diamonds, the first is to actually start your transition using the begin button. The second is to go into pass-through to test out your anti-spam filtering settings in Google Apps. The third is to click Finish, which actually, for a GMD customer, initiates the migration of archive data from Postini to Vault. And the final action is to change your MX records from pointing to Postini to point to Google Apps. I also want to stress that at no point during the transition is Mailflow impacted. We have built this process in such a way to ensure that your Mailflow is not at all impacted by the transition, and we're very, very proud of that fact. What I want to do next is walk through an example of a transition for a customer who has GMD. So they both use GMS for anti-spam and antivirus, GMD for archiving, and has apps as an inbox or mail system. But the details that I'm sharing here apply as well to customers who only have GMS in Postini, customers who have an on-premise system, etc. The last thing I wanted to point out is this second screenshot that you're seeing, this yellow butter bar, appears at the top of your Postini admin console. If you are invited, it actually shows that you have the ability to click begin and start transition, and so you can log in as an administrator to see this. If you don't have your invitation yet, this yellow bar will also allow you to click into the transition console to see some initial information and features that might not be supported in Google Apps to give you a good head start to know what to expect on the other side. An example invitation is what I'm showing here. It's very similar to the one I showed on a previous slide, but as I said, this invitation is sent to your administrator, your Postini administrator, and allows you to click begin from within the message, and also very importantly includes what domains we are transitioning for you and the deadline by which you need to take action. Otherwise, Google will automatically transition you. So the screen that you're seeing here is an image of the transition console itself. This can be accessed either from the yellow butter bar in your Postini admin console or from clicking on the button within the invitation you receive. This window shows, again, what domains we're planning to transition and any items that we need you to fix. If you have a firewall that's still blocking Google IPs, we will list that here. And we also include some non-blocking items, which summarize features that you may have turned on in Postini that won't work quite as similarly in Google Apps. So we provide details about how to work around that and comparable features that we do have access to. So the first action an administrator takes in the transition lifecycle is to click begin. And once clicking begin, one other thing I wanted to mention, down bottom left, I have this during transition link. This link explains what state your Postini admin console will be in during each of the phases of transition. So the important thing to know is once you begin transition, we actually put your Postini administrator console into a read-only mode. This, as you might assume, is due to the fact that during the first phase of your transition, we're moving all of your settings, all of your users, your OUs, etc., and we want to make sure that you don't make a change in Postini that won't be reflected in Google Apps. So there's lots more information available at that short link there, as well as on the Postini transition guide. So once you click begin, what we do is we create a temporary OU in Google Apps if you have an existing apps account, and transition all of your users, your settings, your OUs there. We want to make sure that we don't impact any production users during this phase, and so that's why we move everything into a temp OU, creating domains that were in Postini that don't exist in apps, creating org settings. We transition all your billing information. We make sure that the users that you have in Postini are actually provisioned automatically for you in Google Apps if they don't already exist there. This also includes for archiving customers if you have an employee who left the company, we often call them former employees, where you have data for them in Postini, we make sure to create that user and assign them a Vault former employee license so you can retain that data and search it in your archive. We assign licenses to all users to make sure that if that user has paid for GMS, they now have a GAMS license, or if that user had GMD, they now have a Vault license. And in addition, we copy over all user level settings, so whitelist entries, blacklist entries, etc. The important thing to know is during this phase, no mail flow has changed. Everything is still going through Postini. Postini still continues to govern and be the anti-spam, antivirus solution. It continues to archive all your data. All you've done at this point is copy settings over, and the real fun happens at the next step. So once phase one completes, your transition console shows you this window where we ask that you check all boxes saying that you've reviewed and verified the settings that were transitioned into that temporary OU. You'll also see in this screen links to the Google Admin Console where you go and do that and log in for the first time, as well as a Help Center article for a checklist and instructions of what to review and how. Clicking Next will bring you to the pass-through screen. So pass-through just means that it almost simulates an MX change for a select OU or group of users. We want to make sure that you can slowly turn on the Google Apps filtering settings to make sure that they reflect what you want. And so the pass-through screen enables you to do that. It just turns Postini into a relay for whatever OU you select in the bottom, as you see in the red rectangle. And you can toggle on and off this button to allow pass-through for particular OUs. And what the goal of this is to ensure, because we move all of your anti-spam, antivirus settings into this temporary OU, on the previous screen, what that checklist asks you to do is copy those settings up to your root org and to the organization, the OUs that actually contain any of your app's users. So what pass-through allows you to do is make sure that the copying and the review of the settings that you did actually applies in the way that you want for your users. The final step on the pass-through screen is to toggle on pass-through for all your OUs, at which point Postini is fully turned into a relay, is not filtering mail for you, and Google Apps has completely taken over. The next step is to click Finish Transition. As I mentioned, clicking Finish actually kicks off the migration of any archive data that you have in GMD if you are a GMD customer, and that process will continue for a number of weeks until you receive a message saying that it is complete. You also have access to a progress bar in your transition console to monitor the progress. And another important thing to note is that once phase one completes, you as an administrator have access to log into Vault and to begin querying the archive available there. If you add new users to Google Apps, their archiving will be retained in Vault so that you have access to it. And we ask that during the GMD migration, you query both Vault and Postini GMD to make sure you get the union of all possible archive messages, since there is the potential for certain messages to be available only in Vault for situations like new users being added, etc. The other important thing to know here is I highlight the MX action. This is something where we recommend an administrator change your MX records to point to Google Apps as soon as a week after you have transitioned, if you are an apps customer, for example. Really, when you're in pass-through at this stage, Postini is doing nothing for you. It's just acting as a relay, and so the sooner you're able to change your MX records to point to Google Apps, the faster you can reduce the additional hop of sending mail through Postini. And once you complete the GMD message migration, at this point you will receive an email saying that it is complete, and it will be pointing you to various logs that you can refer to, audit logs showing what messages transitioned where, if there were any messages that were in GMD that could not be inserted into Vault for reasons such as, Vault has the same limits as Google Apps where you can't have an attachment greater than 25 megabytes. Those are reasons where that data instead will be exported to an mbox file, which you will also have access to in that finished email. That file, any mbox files that we create during transition will be accessible to you in Drive, and each mbox file will have what we call a manifest file inside it, giving an explanation for why the message was not able to be inserted into Vault during transition. So that is the detail of the life of a transition. The other point that I want to stress is, again, there are great support reps available to you to provide targeted transition-specific help and answer any questions that you have. That those folks are available at the link, the short link presented first. The Postini Transition Guide, I'm giving a screenshot of it below. It provides so much great information. I continue to refer to it whenever speaking with customers. Things like step-by-step guides, checklists, what you can do, how to get started with Google Apps, how to get started with Google Apps message security, which sometimes here is referred to as Google Apps Advanced Gmail settings. That's how you access it. And finally, if there are any partners on the line, we have a community within Google for Work Connect, which is our online forum for partners only. This is an area where you can go and ask questions that would be answered either by my team or by other partners who have lots of experience transitioning customers so far. And I received a good question prior to the call that I wanted to point out here. I got the question, how do you, one of the steps once you've transitioned off GMD to Vault is to modify your retention rules in Vault. What we do to be extra safe is set an indefinite policy on Vault to ensure that we retain all messages during transition. And then what we ask you to do at the end of transition, once we confirm everything has been moved and things are complete, is that the administrator go into Google Vault and update the retention and remove that indefinite policy if desired. And I got a good question from an administrator saying, how do I make sure to retain mail and not purge messages that an end user has in their inbox, but to actually purge messages that those users have deleted, because that is the particular retention of a customer that asked the question. And I wanted to point out this short link that provides details in our help center of how to use the label :deleted field when you're setting up your retention policies, which allows you to decide whether you want to purge or not purge deleted messages for a user or for your organization, really. So that is the end of my presentation. Let me switch back and answer some of the questions.
Thanks, Erin. I'm actually looking through a few here. If you want to just take a look, there should be a few pinned.
Okay.
Thank you for the great presentation, by the way. I know we are a little bit, we ran a little bit short on time, so we're going to try and hang around and see how many of these questions we can get to. Erin, did you have a chance to open up the Q&A app?
Yes.
Okay, so you should see a few pinned to the top, and then if you scroll down, there should be some more questions there.
Yes. Let me start with this first one that got plussed by 5 people. You still can't search the Gmail logs like you can in Postini. You can't search by text in the subject. It's very hard to find messages in the Gmail admin console. I do believe that we have heard this feedback, and there is work being done by our product team to manage or improve the options in the logs. But I do believe that there are other quite powerful fields in there to use while searching. I'm not an expert on the log search myself, but as I'll say with answering any of these questions, as I'm not the expert, I highly recommend sending this question to our support team. And there are experts on the line there who can maybe provide better suggestions than I have. Next question. If a GMD user Google Apps account has been deleted, how will this archived data be transitioned into Vault? Will a new Google Apps account be created for this user automatically? Yes. What the transition does is if it finds data in GMD for a user that no longer exists in Postini, we know we need that data to be moved to Vault. So we create the user in apps for you. We put it in that temporary OU. And we assign a Vault former employee license to it. That license is $0. It's free. We don't want you to incur any additional costs for those users because all you want is to retain static mail that you can search on. So that is how we do it. And then when the transition starts moving GMD data over, we migrate all that GMD data for the former employee into that user account that we provisioned on your behalf. The next question, content compliance rules in Postini used to apply to all mail. It would appear that rules and apps only seem to apply to paid accounts. Will this be changed in the future? We have a large amount of system mailboxes in Exchange that are not users in Google. So we have the concept of a non-Gmail mailbox, and as long as we have basic filtering rules set up, I do believe that we still offer anti-spam, antivirus settings, but I think this is probably better answered by support with an actual example of what licensing model you have, but I know that we are capable of doing this. The next question, our Postini transition progress bar was stuck at 99% and now it is reverted back to 50%. That is odd. I have heard there's been confusion about the progress bar, unfortunately, for GMD customers. What I recommend is to get the most up-to-date information on where that stands is please contact the Google support transition folks, which is linked in my presentation, and I'll be sharing the presentation out afterwards if you weren't able to jot down that short link. Do the users have to get off the system while this is going on? Not quite sure what you mean off the system, whether it's Postini, but users still have access to Postini during transition. We allow admins to continue to log into the administrator console, which will be in read-only mode at least 30 days after your transition completes. But this should be a relatively low impact event for end users, which is always was by design for us. I've been duplicating whitelists and IP lists in the Gmail admin console from Postini. Is the transition going to overwrite or erase all that and automatically copy all that information from Postini to Gmail? So we will automatically copy all that information that you've done manually. Sorry for that, but we won't overwrite. So we will be creating a new temporary OU during transition, and that's where we'll copy everything and where we'll provision all the settings. So we won't impact anything that you've done. And if you've moved everything manually, we've actually had a few customers do this almost for a housekeeping exercise, just to make sure that the settings were actually still up to date. And we just recommend you can go ahead and ignore all the settings that were copied over from the temp OU. But do be sure in the temp OU to check what users we provisioned and make sure to put those into the appropriate OUs which live underneath your root OU in Google Apps. How does this affect Google Apps for government accounts that are Postini integrated customers? We utilize Postini and Google Apps without on-premise mail servers. We fully support transitioning into Google Apps for government accounts if they already exist. So it is likely that I know government accounts were some of the last that we were going to be transitioning just due to complexities in building the transition tool. So you should be receiving an invitation to transition in the next few weeks, and it should work just as if you were a regular business account. We had Postini set up via a reseller. Where in the Postini console do we find out who is getting the email notification? How can we get the email notice if it isn't going to us? This is a great question. So if you bought Postini through a reseller, Google first notifies the reseller that the customer is eligible for an invitation, but we want to give the resellers a little extra time to contact you and be the ones to send you the invitation. So that sometimes there can be, a delay of a couple weeks before the partner takes action, or what we do is if the partner doesn't take action in a certain amount of time, we automatically invite you. So at some point you will get an invitation, whether the reseller initiates that or if Google does it on their behalf. In terms of which reseller is receiving it or what email address is receiving it, that is a good question to pose to support. It depends on each account. Unfortunately, there isn't a way for administrators to see this in the Postini console. Not that I know of. So please contact our support team, and they can let you know.
Hey, Erin, I think we had another similar question below that I saw. Someone was asking about their Google Apps reseller who they were working with for Postini that actually went out of business, and who would have received the email information. Can you comment on that a little? I'm assuming that the process is similar there, but can you just comment on that quickly?
Sure. Yeah, unfortunately, some resellers decided not to transition their customers from Postini to Google Apps. So those customers won't be able to use our automated tools. We do have instructions for how to manually transition yourself in those situations, though the manual instructions are available in the Postini Transition Guide. Or if you want some more targeted assistance, please contact our support team. Thanks, Andrew. What is the difference for GMD transition if we have a Postini integrated environment? Really, there is no difference. You will be able to automatically transition your settings. In fact, I apologize. I believe that the screens that I show you will look a little bit different if you have an integrated environment. I am not an expert on that environment, so unfortunately, again, I would refer you to look at the Postini Transition Guide and search for integrated instruction details. And if that doesn't get you what you need, again, support is there and available to answer your questions. I know it's been hard for some folks to know which support number or team to find, and so the short link that I provide should get you right to the folks that you need to. We have 2 separate Google Apps accounts that use one Postini account. How will the transition affect us? This is a great question. Thanks, Francis. Our automated tool handles this case. So this is part of the complexity and why this transition process has taken us so long, is because we've tried to design the automated tool to work for every type of configuration. So what will happen is, since you have one Postini account, you'll receive an invitation for that one account, and it will show you that it intends to transition into 2 Google Apps accounts. So it will actually split your GMS settings and your GMD settings and your GMD data among the 2 apps accounts and complete the transition that way. If that is not what you want to happen, if you want to actually transition your Postini settings into one of the accounts, we have a detailed article in the Help Center about how to make sure that the information goes to just one of the accounts rather than both. But we want to make sure that we can accommodate for both desires. I was the one, does it mean I can call Google support? Oh, I presume this question is, I bought from a reseller, can I contact Google support?
So Erin, that was the person who had the out of business reseller, and they were asking, should they wait for an invitation or should they contact support to begin the transition?
So they won't be getting an invitation, unfortunately, because their reseller is not transitioning their customers. So they can still contact support to get suggestions and a link to how to migrate manually, but unfortunately, that's the case for customers who bought from resellers who have decided not to transition. With Postini, we were able to provide the end users with access to their archives. Will that feature be available for Vault? Yes, we are working on a personal archive feature that should be available in the next few weeks. But it's interesting, we found that of the customers that have migrated so far and wanted that feature, because there's such large storage quota on the Gmail side, it often isn't a very useful feature, but it will be available, and once it's launched, more information will be in the Help Center. We have one Postini org that is archived and the other is not. How will the transition handle this? Well, the transition will just assign Vault licenses to the users in that one Postini organization that has GMD archiving. So it'll be a model where some users' data is archived, some isn't, and that's fully supported in Google Apps. After you've been fully transitioned, how will GADS work with the suspension of users and being able to automatically move users from the suspended OU to the VFE org? Will assigning a VFE license to a user move them automatically without GADS? Great question, Zoab. This is something that we're still trying to work through and make a little bit more seamless for users. As you hint to, it's a little bit more of a manual process to apply VFE licenses, suspending users, basically whenever you're trying to offboard a user. Right now, it's going to remain as is, but we're in the works on designing a better solution for the former employee use case. How long is the transition window now? So GMD customers, once you get an invitation, you'll have 45 days to transition. For GMS customers, if you've received an invitation up until now, you're provided 60 days to transition. If you get an invitation anytime from now on, for whatever reason, we have some customers who call us and try to uncancel. They, months ago had said we don't want to transition, and now they come back and say, can we please transition? Those folks will only receive 30 days to transition.
Erin, I think we may have lost you for a second.
Oh, am I back?
Yeah, could you just repeat those last few seconds?
Sure. GMD customers will have 45 days to transition. Customers on GMS who have already been invited were provided a 60-day window. But going forward, if there's any sort of straggler customers that want to transition from GMS but previously had said they didn't, we're providing a 30-day window. We have a question. We initiated our transition in November and were informed in December that our transition status was paused. We are EDU domain. Do we know when the paused transitions will resume? Great question. The reason why we don't currently have invitations available for GMD customers is we had to tune the system and make some changes in December and January. We're about ready to roll those out and unpause any customers that were sort of in the middle of transition, and to also invite all remaining GMD customers. So the next few weeks that will unpause. We're making great progress there. I think I answered this top one of a weird progress bar experience. So definitely contact support about that one. I'm not really sure what's happening there. Andrew, do you see any other?
I think it seems like you've gotten a chance to answer majority of these. I know a lot of these questions, everyone, are fairly specific to your individual use cases.
Right.
I don't want Erin to go through and answer every specific question that's not really applicable to the entire group, but I think we probably covered a lot of great information here today. I think we can wrap up for now, unless Erin, you see any major points you can hit on in the Q&A app.
Yeah, sorry, now that I scrolled down, let me see. One question, how long is the training period for spam filtering after the transition? We allow you to play around with your spam settings, and we won't force you into pass-through until your deadline date, so it's all dependent on when you start your transition. If you start your transition 2 weeks before your deadline date, then you'll have 2 weeks to play around and get all your settings copied up to your root org. Who do we reach out to for assistance with this migration process? If you are a resold customer, you can contact your reseller for assistance, or even if you're a resold customer or bought Postini directly from Google, you're welcome to contact Google support and get assistance. Take your time. April would be good. Thanks, Liz. We we'll probably be inviting GMD customers in the next couple weeks with a 45-day window. So it's possible you can do some work in April. So we'll see about that. Losing archives is not important. I'm not sure I understand that question. Sorry. We have the following message. Your Postini users and settings are now configured in Google Apps, and mail filtering is now being performed. Do we need to change our MX records now or wait until we are at 100%? Paul, if you are a GMS customer, this means that you are done, and you can change as long as you have actually gone through the checklist, right? Make sure you complete the checklist of reviewing all the settings that we automatically copied over, and make sure that they are applied to the right OUs if you had a previous structure in Google Apps. And once that's all done, we recommend that you do pass through to test those settings, which you can toggle on and off. We recommend changing MX records as soon after, like a week after you go into pass-through, just to provide a little burn-in time, so to speak. But you are almost done. So Chris asked, to be clear, if we conduct an OU test migration, do we just start over again and select the top tier for the rest of the organization? You cannot do a transition based on each OU. The way it works is you click start on your transition, which has to move everything over, right? But we make sure that we don't impact production users. So what you're able to test at the OU level is mail flow. So that is something that you have access to within the transition console. Couple more reseller went out of business questions. Again, I would contact support and they can point you to the instructions for manually transitioning because we're not able to offer you the automated tool. Paul asked, we had Postini before we went Google Apps. Postini essentially forwards all email to Google Apps to handle spam. We have no special rules in Postini or GMD. Can we just update our MX records and bypass Postini instead of waiting? Absolutely. So if there is nothing that Postini is doing for you, and it's basically acting as a relay today, you are free to change your MX records, and that's it. Let's see. Are there any plans to make the email log usable by non-super admins? This is a troubleshooting function my admin team now has to delegate. That is a good question. I don't have an answer for that. Again, I would suggest posing that to the support team, and they know better, or will ask the engineers if that's coming. Let's see. We have not received an invite. When should we be receiving it? Yeah, Lori, thank you for your patience. It will be sent to the administrator account listed in Postini. So I make sure to know what email address that is. It's unfortunately the only one that we have access to and where we need to send the information. So just make sure you're checking that mailbox. But if you haven't received the invitation yet, I promise we'll be inviting everybody in the next few weeks, and you can start taking actions. But we're just slowly ramping up the remaining GMD transitions right now.
I can take this one here. Zoa was asking, when will Erin's slides be emailed out to those of you who have requested it. I'm going to try and get those out this afternoon. I have a couple more of the presentations today to handle, but I will do my best to get them out today, and if not, they will be out by the end of the week. Erin, is there anything else that you want to get to, or I think we answered a lot of questions today.
Yeah, I think that's it. I'm happy to answer additional ones as they come in, so just let me know, Andrew.
Sure. And I think you could stop by maybe the Google Plus community and see if there's some questions there.
Sure.
But thank you very much, Erin, for the presentation and hanging around and asking or answering so many questions. I think the main takeaways for everyone that's still here on the broadcast, if you have additional questions that are specific to your account, definitely contact your reseller if you are working with one. And if not, or even still, if you were working with a reseller, contact the support team. And it sounds like they can be very helpful there. Other than that, I think we can pretty much wrap up this presentation. I mentioned at the beginning we have 2 more today, so if you haven't already, please register for the other 2 events today. Those will be getting underway in a couple of hours. So once again, Erin, thank you so much for joining us. It was a great presentation. We were very happy to have you, and we will see you later.
Thanks, Andrew. Bye, everyone.